Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Post Up with David Grubb. I, of course, am David Grubb, and thank you for joining me. Hit that subscribe button immediately and make the Post Up your first daily stop every day to stay up to date on the latest news and analysis of the Pels. We're going to start by looking at the Pelicans' backcourt. Last season, CJ McCollum and Dejounte Murray only appeared in 31 games together due to injury primarily, and that may be all we ever see of that duo together, honestly, because of all the changes that could happen with the Pelicans this season. So let's begin with an update on Dejounte Murray. Murray's first season with the Pelicans obviously derailed by injuries, first the fractured wrist on opening night in the season opener, and then the torn right Achilles on January 31st in that game against the Celtics. Since undergoing the surgery, Dejounte's been working at getting back to the court. This past weekend on social media, he posted a video of himself walking without any assistance, no boot on or anything like that, and definitely showing some progress in his return. Still, there's no official timetable from the Pelicans for his return to the court. I'm sure he's only talked to Joe Dumars by phone at this stage, but I would also bet that the Pelicans medical staff is in contact with his team constantly. The typical timeline for a return to the court after surgery on your Achilles is about 10 months for NBA players. Though if you remember Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, a little bit older than where Dejounte is now, but not too old, too much distance. Both missed an entire season following their Achilles tears. So if you go from the 10 months, January 31st, that would put him somewhere around November of this year. If you go to the 12 months from the injury, then you're talking about, January, of course, the end of January. But with rehab and all those things, I think it is likely and more likely than not that he could miss far more than half of next season and maybe all of it. But even before that injury, I think there were concerns about Dejounte Murray and his fit with New Orleans. He was not himself, or at least the self that he was promised to be when the Pelicans made that trade with the Hawks. The numbers were terrible, and there's no sugarcoating that. His per 100 offensive rating was the worst it had been in his career since his second season in the league, when he wasn't even a full-time player at that point. His defensive rating tied for the second worst of his career. The biggest problems on offense were his turnovers, a career worst 3.4 per game, plenty of 5, 6, 7 turnover games, and his terrible shooting numbers. Career lows from 2 and from 3. His finishing at the rim was below average, and he didn't get to the basket very often. He often settled for those difficult twos, fadeaways in the paint, fadeaways outside of the paint, but he didn't really get to the rim a lot. You didn't see an athletic advantage from Dejounte Murray on the offensive end. He was supposed to be someone who could create at a high level for other players and get them involved, not turn the ball over, because he had historically been a guy who had a good assist-to-turnover ratio. And he was also supposed to be someone who performed well down the stretch of games. And we didn't see that very much from Dejounte. Now, he's scheduled to earn $31.5 million, more than that, but that's the round number, $31.5 million next season, $33.5 million in 2026-27, and he has a $31.6 million option in 2027-28. I personally was never really high on his fit for the Pelicans. There was an article on the Bird Rights that we kind of outlined the concerns about his defense sliding over the last couple of seasons while he was in Atlanta, and his offensive game maybe not meshing as well as people could have thought. He very much, at the time, had become more of an individual offensive player, even though he had some big performances with the Hawks. The Pelicans have to be worried that even if he makes a full recovery, that they've already gotten the best that they're going to get out of Dejounte Murray. The one thing that is undeniable about Murray, and we'll give him this credit above anything, is that he's a resilient and determined person and a dedicated basketball player. Like, there's never been any reports that Dejounte doesn't work hard, that he's not a good teammate. He is respected by these guys. Zion Williamson talked about how important he was this season when talking about dedication. Trey Murphy talked about the importance of Dejounte Murray. So certainly he has allies and friends and is thought well of in that locker room. But can he make a full recovery and recapture, if not all, most of what he was at his peak? And that remains in doubt. In the meantime, the Pelicans have a problem in shoring up their point guard position. It has to be a priority for Joe Dumars. That has to be either handled in the draft. And we've talked about Dylan Harper in particular, but there are other point guards at different stages in the draft. or free agency. Because Jose Alvarado, and at the end of the season, Jose was asked about potentially having to be the starting point guard next season due to these injuries, and he said that's what he was going to prepare his mind and his body to do. And I understand that he wants to be able to take on that responsibility. Jose, as far as a person, is an ultimate type teammate. He's going to do whatever it takes, or whatever he's being told that it takes for his team to win. Like when you ask somebody if they're coachable, Jose Alvarado is going to be right there as far as that, his coachability and willing to do whatever it takes for his team. But as a starter who is counted on playing 35 to 38 minutes per night, Jose taking on the physical demands of doing that just makes him a less valuable player for the Pelicans. His greatest strengths as a player, as a change of pace, a secret weapon, so to speak, as somebody that other teams cannot really game plan for, because when he comes in, there's an unusual quality to his game, the way he plays, the energy that he brings, the tempo that he creates. But him having to sustain that for more than 25 minutes, and if you go look at the statistics, they'll show you, and I've talked about this before, is that there's a point of diminishing returns that hits quickly when Jose gets to 25 minutes or more. Pelicans don't usually win those games, and that's been throughout his career. They were more successful during the 49-win season, but everything was inflated that year. But since he's come into the league, typically when he plays 25 minutes or more, the Pelicans don't do particularly well. So as a starter, he can have those nice nights, but it's a lose-lose for him and the Pelicans to be a starter. Now, before we get into the CJ McCollum part of the backcourt, I want to switch gears really quickly and just change directions, because according to a report from Sam Amico, Giannis Antetokounmpo wants to play in either Los Angeles, New York, or Miami if he gets traded. Now, you can go back to yesterday's show, and Monday's show, and we talked in detail about the potential of a Giannis Zion trade 1-for-1. So I think obviously this dramatically changes things for the Pelicans side of it. It ends any idea of Giannis coming to New Orleans. I think the Pelicans certainly could still be involved in a trade that sends Giannis to Miami or New York and getting some pieces back to improve their stock. But there's no way you can go to this fan base and facilitate a move of Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Los Angeles Lakers. Not again. Not for this fan base. I think the Clippers are a slightly different story. You could get away with being a third team and moving Giannis from Milwaukee to the Clippers, but you can't be the New Orleans Pelicans and be seen by your fan base as constantly helping a team that they hate, a team that has been a thorn in their side for years, whether it was during the Kobe Bryant era and they lost to the Lakers in the playoffs, or whether it was the trade of Anthony Davis to the Lakers, or whether it's been just this constant, just the playing loss with Zion Williamson, and there are too many sore spots when it comes to the Pelicans Lakers history for the Pelicans to be involved in facilitating a deal for Giannis to go to LA. You're helping a foe, you're helping a rival, you're helping a hated team, and no matter what you get back in that deal from either the Lakers or the Bucks, it ain't gonna be good. The Clippers, again, could be a different story. The Clippers have some pieces and maybe some draft picks that could be intriguing. But whatever there was, any idea of a 1-for-1 deal of sending Zion to Milwaukee and getting Giannis in return, that's done. If this report is anything close to accurate, and I think it would have to be, because I think if you're Giannis, yeah, you're going to shoot for the moon, right? I think then for the Bucks, certainly, again, there's nothing for me to take from the Lakers, I think. But I think you could get a better deal with the Knicks or possibly the Heat. But we shall see. But there are other teams that keep popping up as potential trade partners for Zion. And one of the big ones has been the Detroit Pistons. Their name has been mentioned a lot. And obviously, Pelicans fans are kind of getting tired of hearing about the Pistons too, because there's been such an interconnection between these two franchises, obviously. Whether it's the new Pelicans front office, or whether it's members of the old Pelicans front office, or whether it's players, there's just been this heavy tie between the Pelicans and the Pistons as of late. Now, the Pistons are looking for a star, of course, to pair with Cade Cunningham, who just came off of his best season of his career. Pistons get back into the playoffs, took the Knicks to 7. Obviously, these teams very familiar with each other. One proposed deal would send Zion to the Motor City for guard Jaden Ivey, forward Tobias Harris, and picks. Ivy is coming off a season cut short by injury where he averaged 17.6 points and 4 assists in 30 games. That's the magic number, obviously, for the Pelicans. 30 games. Getting somebody to 30 games, that's about what you get. But before that, Jaden had played in 70-plus games in his first 2 seasons. Last year was derailed by injury. He did shoot nearly 41% from three-point range on more than 5 attempts per game, so he is a volume three-point shooter who can make shots consistently. An undersized shooting guard at 6'4", but that shooting ability makes up for that lack of height. He is eligible for his rookie extension this offseason. His current contract pays him $10.1 million this season, and then, of course, he goes into restricted free agency. Harris would be along for the ride as a competent veteran and salary filler who comes off a solid year for the Pistons, especially in their playoff series against the Knicks. He shot 44% from three-point range, averaging 15.7 points and 7.7 rebounds. The biggest thing for Tobias Harris is that he shows up. The man's going to play basketball games for you. 73 games played this past season. He hasn't played less than 60 games in a season since the 2012-2013 campaign. His deal is also expiring with him entering the final year of his 2-year, $52 million contract. So the Pelicans could take the real route of rebuilding. Let's say you do get, and you wouldn't want to do this immediately, but you do get some real financial flexibility if you make that deal. If you win the lottery and you get Cooper Flag and you say, we're going to just rebuild this thing, we're going to ship Zion out and we want to get financially flexible and kind of redo this thing. If that's the plan, you get a lot of flexibility by doing that. You bring in Jaden Ivey, you're getting somebody who's seems like an ascending young player, not your star, not your centerpiece, but certainly could fit along someone like a Cooper Flag. Or a Dylan Harper, if that's who you end up with, and you decide to build around that backcourt. A Dylan Harper, Jaden Ivey, Trey Murphy wing trio sounds pretty good. With a Herb Jones in there for defensive purposes in the mix as your sixth man, to come in and play starter type minutes as a defender. If Herb can get back to shooting the ball well, it's an interesting proposition. But it would also necessitate maybe some different outcomes for CJ McCollum. Because CJ then, who's entering the last year of his deal, if you're playing the long game as Joe Dumars and you say we're in this rebuild, then you could hold on to CJ in that situation and let his contract come off the books. And you've got some real financial flexibility. If you, let's say, let Tobias Harris and let CJ McCollum both walk at the end of their deals, you re-sign Jaden Ivey to a reasonable deal, you get those picks with the Pistons deal. And even if you don't get anything in return for CJ, or you're not taking back a bad deal, let's say, or taking back any bad contracts, but you want that financial flexibility to really pursue some major free agents next season, at the end of next season, then you're in a position to do that and really reshape the franchise. That would signal that Joe Dumars' intent is to be here for the long haul. If that's the route you're going to go. I think that there are worse ways to go, but certainly that would be an option. If you're going to keep CJ, then that would be that version of the deal. Now, the other option, of course, is with CJ going into the last year of his contract, is to go ahead and move him and try to get back what you can in return, allowing CJ to finish his career somewhere where he has a better chance of winning something. And whatever your opinion of CJ McCollum is as far as his on-court performance, and I've also detailed what I think, for CJ McCollum is just that, I think his tenure in New Orleans has been underrated. He's performed admirably, in my opinion. He's shown up, he's done his job, and he's done the things that he's needed to do. But if you are going to trade him, then what teams make the most sense as destinations for CJ? And I think the three that tend to come back over and over again are Orlando, a team that is in desperate need of shooting. The Rockets, another team that, we saw get beat by the Warriors because they couldn't make shots, in particular Jalen Green, who had single-digit scoring in most of those games of that series. And then, again, the Detroit Pistons. So let's start with Detroit. So if you keep Zion and you trade CJ, you can get that same package from Detroit. You could still get the Tobias Ivey package for CJ. Those salaries are about the same in that combination. Now, you're not probably going to get picks in that deal, But what you're getting again is a young player that you can keep and have the rights to, and you get the expiring contract of Tobias Harris for that financial relief. And I think that could be beneficial to the Pelicans. The other deals on the table are a little less appealing to me, because if you go to Houston, what you're most likely getting back is some combination of Jeff Green, Jock Landale, Jae'Sean Tate, and Aaron Holiday. Out of those, I like Jae'Sean Tate, but none of those guys are stars, and none of those guys would start for you. So you're giving up a starter or a guy who can play starter minutes for role players, and in Jeff Green, you're getting a very veteran player. Now, certainly, if you talk about culture, Aaron Holiday and Jeff Green are professionals, and they could certainly bring that to your locker room. But none of these guys are going to get your fan base excited for the loss of CJ McCollum. In Orlando, a little bit more potential to help your team, though none of the choices are particularly sexy. You still get some upside. Cole Anthony, a player who at times has looked really, really good and maybe could flourish in a different place. Gary Harris, a veteran guard, could be part of that deal. And we've seen the best of Gary Harris, and at times he can be a very solid backcourt performer. Jett Howard, I think, is untapped potential. He was someone that when he was coming into the draft, I thought could be a good potential fit for the New Orleans Pelicans because of his ability to knock down shots. But he has not gotten that opportunity in Orlando to really show what he can do. In flashes, you've seen his talent, but he's never really gotten the minutes. He could be potentially a stretch for you and play that role. Another guy would be Corey Joseph, who, again, Pelicans fans are familiar with, having seen him play plenty. But, again, none of those folks get you excited, but they could all help you in certain ways. They could, Cole Anthony is a guy who's not going to hesitate to take shots. He's going to drive. Gary Harris can handle the ball. He's not going to turn it over. He can knock down shots. All these guys would be part of your backcourt. Most of them, you're not getting a lot of length and athleticism in this group outside of Jett Howard. But look, he didn't have a lot of length and athleticism with CJ McCollum. I don't know which of those destinations would be best, but I think the Detroit deal would be best. I don't know, but I think the Detroit deal, if you could trade CJ to Detroit and get back Jaden Ivey and Tobias Harris, again, I think that's a good quality deal for the Pelicans, with or without Pigs. I think that's a good deal. Now, the next thing to kind of focus on for the Pelicans would be the draft, of course, and what the impact of that will be. And mock drafts lately have been showing a lot of change for the Pelicans and identifying what those players can be. People are going from that 4th spot and the Pelicans staying there, and some mocks have them dropping all the way down to 8th. I think obviously they're using Tankathon or things like that to just kind of play this thing out. In 4th, the name that has come up more and more often is of course, VJ Edgecombe. Again, you can check out Monday's episode and you could see my breakdown of VJ Edgecombe, who I like as a player, but I don't know if immediately he fits what the Pelicans need, addressing those issues of being able to create on the perimeter, knock down shots immediately, and then defend the post, give you better paint protection. He can't do any of those things. Not saying he can't be an elite player in this league. I believe he can. I just think it's going to take a minute. And the skills that he brings to the Pelicans may not fit immediately. You have to have a plan for VJ Edgecombe. The same thing that I would say for a guy like Trey Johnson, who is also pinned to the Pelicans a lot. Trey Johnson out of Texas, a little bit taller than Edgecombe, a little bit better wingspan. But what you get out of Trey Johnson compared to Edgecombe, both of them, very dynamic players. But for with Trey Johnson, you get the knockdown shooter at that 2-guard position. Both of them are athletic. I would say both of them struggle with their ball handling, not really creative as ball handlers. But Trey Johnson, the advantage for him, whereas if you're getting VJ Edgecombe, you're relying on his athleticism and his instincts and him to grow into, whether it's a Victor Oladipo, Dwayne Wade type. For Trey Johnson, what you're getting is maybe the next, let's say, a version of a Klay Thompson. I don't know if he's as good a shooter as Klay Thompson, but I'm saying, like, you could immediately have him come in and be somebody who works just off of screens and does off-ball work, catches and shoots. And then in those opportunities where he gets a quick closeout, he could take advantage of that, drive to the bucket, and finish. Defensively, okay. but most rookies come into the league and you just hope that they're okay defensively. No attitude problems, anything like that. But there are also more and more mock drafts that kind of push the Pelicans a little bit back. And I think that, in that case, if the Pelicans go below, let's say 7, I think there's anything below 4. If you fall back, I think you have to consider trading the pick immediately. But if you fall below 7, then I think you really need to think about moving it, unless somebody in that top 4 falls for some reason. But if you're at 7 and you're trying to rebuild around Zion Williamson, another rookie at that stage is less likely to have an immediate impact. Because let's say that the player that the Pelicans get attached to as far as the front court, Derek Queen, again, in a vacuum, I like Derek Queen. What's not to like about a guy who's 6'10" and who can score and had some big moments as a freshman for Maryland, taking them to the NCAA tournament? But the problem is Derek Queen does not address the issues that you have on the front court. He's not a stretch big. He only hit maybe, I think, 4 3-pointers all of last season at the college level. So he's not a stretch big. He's not a shot blocker. He's not a great rebounder. He's an offensive player. Again, that's fine. You need better offensive players on this team, no doubt. But you can make offensive players, non-offensive players better when you have elite talent like a Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, and those types of guys. You can make guys who are lesser offensive talents better. But if a guy who in your front court, where your problems were significant last season in rebounding, in rim protection, in getting points in the paint outside of someone named Zion Williamson, if you're adding another big to that, in Derek Queen, who prefers more to operate as a post up, as a face up shooter in the mid range area, and not a stretch, and not really a great post game per se, that's another project. And you have your project big in Yves Missi. You have to do already a lot of work to get Yves Missi to the place that you want him to be. So trying to do that same type of work with a Derek Queen, while also trying to get him the offensive touches to maximize him, I think is a big question mark. So as the Pelicans get closer and closer to the draft, I think, again, Monday, and you guys don't forget to check us out on Boo Crew next Monday, where we will be doing live analysis of the draft lottery. It determines so much of this offseason and next season for the Pelicans. In politics, every time we get to an election season, they say this is the most important election of your lives. And I think as Pelicans fans, you've kind of been told for the last 7 years, this is the most important offseason of the franchise's history. And this is no different. Not with a new executive team, not with the player changes that have to be made. And quite frankly, as you look at the rumors around coaching, as it looks like it's more and more likely that James Borrego could be moving on. Again, check yesterday's episode about our conversation about that, whether it's just an ideological difference with Willie Green, or an opportunity difference in becoming the head coach of the Suns, or taking on an opportunity somewhere else as an assistant. If you got to reshape this coaching staff again, what about it is attractive to make that change? Are top-level assistants clamoring to come work for the New Orleans Pelicans when everything is uncertain? And so that's why this lottery is so important to this franchise, because after that, in this time that we've had so far, Joe Dumars hasn't had to tell the public what the direction of the franchise is. But once that lottery is done, that's the impetus for Dumars to start revealing his plan, because the questions are going to come in immediately. No matter what that pick is, who are you taking? And the speculation will begin. And the trade speculation will begin on who wants that pick. And as the NBA playoffs get deeper and we start to see teams eliminated, and teams start making their coaching hires, and teams start figuring out which players don't want to be with them and which players they want to pursue, the Pelicans are going to have power. They're going to have power. It's all about how you use it. There is leverage. The Pelicans are not a leverage-less franchise. They are not in a position to just be taken advantage of. throughout this offseason and just be a facilitator for other teams. They can dramatically change their course and their direction in one offseason. It can be done. We've seen it done throughout the NBA and with the New Orleans Pelicans. It's why I so often go back when thinking about this year, compare it to the 2004-05 season, the previous worst season in franchise history. Because if you can go into this offseason and get a franchise-changing player in the top 4, and they did following that season in getting Chris Paul, and folks were disappointed certainly in not getting the number 1 pick, but you ended up with a Hall of Fame player. If you can do that again, you already have some talent in place. And I think that was the thing that you saw when Chris came in, was that there was a young player base in place in David West. You had, who had previously was the first round draft pick in New Orleans. And then you added Chris. You had a coach then in Byron Scott who had experienced success in New Jersey, taking the Nets to 2 finals. So you had the credibility on the bench. You had a young star who had the competitive fire in himself and the desire to lift his team, the ability to lift his team and just raise their floor. They didn't make the playoffs in year 1, but he certainly raised their floor, almost doubling their win total in the first season. They became a better team, and you can find that player, I believe, in this draft. I don't think it's a disaster. I know folks say if you get anything lower than 2, you need to trade the pick. I don't think it's a disaster to be in the top 4. I think you can still find the right player in this draft in the top 4. Anything below 4, yeah, I think you really need to consider moving on from. Though there are players who I think could help for the right price. If you have to trade back, let's say you end up at 6 and you have to trade back and pick up a player of value and you get something in return for that, that could be a good move. That doesn't mean you get out of the first round completely and just take on a player. I think that you still need to continue to add young, inexpensive talent to this roster and move some of your players that have not lived up to their potential off of this roster. But the Pelicans have to understand and commit to a path. And that thing will hang over this franchise until we hear from Joe Dumars and we get a direction, until we get a commitment on Willie Green, until we get or whether you're going to keep him or let him go. You're going to get a commitment on Zion Williamson, whether he's going to stay or whether he's going to leave. A commitment on CJ McCollum, whether he's going to stay or he's going to leave. And that's what you need from the New Orleans Pelicans at this stage. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today's show. I really appreciate you checking us out and watching and responding. The response yesterday was phenomenal. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I think that this partnership is already showing its potential, and we'll just continue to grow from here. Again, I'm just so excited, and I can't tell you enough how much the words of appreciation and encouragement mean to me. So again, just thank you to everybody for checking us out. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you leave your comments below. If you have a particular question about anything I've said in this podcast, any questions that you may have that you want to address or any comments, I'll certainly be responding to those as we did during the premiere. So thank you again. Don't forget to check me out on social media at DM Grubb. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. I'm on all of those places. So you can find me on each one of those as well. Till the next time, let's go Pels.